Welcome to your favorite faceless masked commentator. I share my thoughts and cover news. If you find this interesting, like the video and leave a comment. Today we're talking about an interesting move by Alphabet, parent of Google and the Pentagon. The talking point? Artificial intelligence. This is a notable shift after years of distance between the company and defense contracts, and it lines up with how the Pentagon is now pulling in multiple AI players to modernize everything from intelligence work to logistics. For those curious, I'm actually for AI. I might do a personal video on it. That said, I'm not so sure I want Google in on the action here. There was a big hack in Google in 2010 where a bunch of important information got sent to China. This move also comes after Anthropic and the Pentagon cut ties due to a controversial safeguard. Back in 2018, Google faced major internal pushback from its own employees over involvement in the Pentagon's Project Maven program, basically putting AI into the military for everything except shooting. That whole episode put a rift between big tech and the national security world. At least it did for Google. Amazon and Microsoft were already in the game here. Fast forward to now, they're starting to walk that back a bit. Alphabet and the Department of Defense have been holding talks that could allow the Pentagon to deploy Gemini inside secure military systems. Nothing's finalized yet, but the timing of this makes sense. The Pentagon has been pushing big for all sorts of AI initiatives to accelerate decision-making. For a military wing, this conceptually makes sense. However, here's where we get to an interesting dynamic. If you're with the MAGA movement, you may want to pay attention here. Part of these AI initiatives involves the ability to use AI for mass surveillance and autonomous weaponry. In late February 2026, the tensions boiled over into a full-blown standoff. Anthropic's CEO Dario Amodei met with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth with a new contract language from the Pentagon. This contract demanded unfettered access to Claude without existing safeguards for lawful use. On the surface, it seems like the Pentagon is clearly in the wrong here. Can't blame you. I heard Claude was used in the operation against Maduro, and now Claude is a security risk? But think about this. Pete can't tell us exactly where and how they're using AI in their military systems. Notice how from Pete's side, he never really explains or details what lawful use is, and he shouldn't. You can't play around with the intel when it comes to military because it gives potential threats intel against us. You see this similar dynamic with the battle in Iran. My working theory is that Pete had to take a PR hit by using vague language to prevent intel leaks. When you consider that, you enter another layer of the conversation. Did Anthropic's CEO consider that before framing this the way he did? If he didn't, then this whole situation is something of a misunderstanding. If he did, however, then Pete and Trump's claim of Anthropic being a security risk holds some water. A company trying to tell the military what it can and can't do is a big problem. The military will always have more important defensive intel than some company. Here are some examples of mass surveillance being used in lawful ways. Technically, these would all be under mass domestic surveillance. Anyone caught in the frame, you can argue being filmed without consent. And yet in these circumstances, I doubt most would care if it meant disarming the threat. Comparing this to Anthropic official statement behind why they refused. All of a sudden, it looks like woke liberal Democrat bullshit. Protecting rights over people in potential hostile situations or undermining the intelligence gathering process. You could also spin this into Democrat-leaning CEOs wanting to hide how bad illegal immigrants are and use human rights as a shield. Sounds like a cop-out until you look at the Nick Shirley situation. California officials are passing a bill to stop people from discovering massive amounts of fraud in the state. I'll give them a pass on the fully autonomous weapons, however. Their excuse there was that they weren't confident about their technology being effective. If you know anything about YouTube's AI enforcement and content strike systems, you have to give some credit to Anthropic here. By the way, we're talking about a company and CEO based in Piss State, California. The same state with massive amounts of fraud, corpo shills, woke retarded businesses and celebrities, and scumbag politicians. Anything in California is stained in shit nowadays. Getting back to Alphabet, I see them as more of a security threat than Anthropic. To explain why, you need to understand how AI works and Operation Aurora. To keep it simple, there are 2 databases for each AI. When you type something into ChatGPT, your question is converted into data, then sent off your computer. From here, it passes through the first user or IP database to keep track of who submitted what request. Then it's passed to the AI's brain. This brain is a specialized second database filled with the artificial neurons to perform the calculations for the request. With this in mind, let's talk about Operation Aurora. This was an incredibly sophisticated cyber attack widely believed to originate from China. It hit Google, Adobe, and at least 34 other high-profile companies in the technology, financial, and defense sectors. The attackers were after source code repositories, intellectual property, and sensitive data. The method was highly advanced. We're talking Russian doll layers of encrypted code to hack into Gmail accounts belonging to Chinese human rights activists. Combined with increasing restrictions on free speech online in China, this led Google to make a bold decision. They announced they were no longer willing to censor search results on Google.cn. The history of this isn't too important. When you combine this with the fact that China is known for world global espionage, it paints a concerning picture. That first user database for AI can be hacked remotely. The second database isn't as possible to infiltrate right now, but considering that China is ahead of us in the AI race, we caught multiple attempts of Chinese infiltration. Google is among the most well-known cyber companies in the world. The idea of Google's AI being in a location so close to our military is very bad. Where exactly will the AI's brain be stored? If the AI brain is functioning similar to a consumer-grade AI with extra security protocols, that's not gonna cut it. If the AI brain is rebuilt inside the Pentagon for private use, that's better, but it'll demand getting past these woke AI companies. Thank God the Pentagon is pursuing a multi-vendor strategy. For my personal thoughts, I'm skeptical of every AI aside from Grok. Even with that, I understand the idea of not relying on one AI. I also understand that America has to stay in the race against China for AI technology and how it can be used militarily. As I mentioned, we're behind on the AI and robotics race. China already has mass-produced robots that are learning motions and coordinations that are very close to a military soldier. For the Pentagon situation, I can play both sides here. On one hand, nobody anti-government wants the government having the ability to have mass surveillance. That technology can easily be used against its own people like in China. If the Democrats get in control of this ability right now, they'll use it to find anyone in MAGA for one reason or another. In this regard, I give these companies some credit. If the Pentagon wants to respect companies and not mass control them, that means playing by their demands, just like a business-to-business relationship. Despite what I said, I still think making them a security risk was a push too far. On the other hand, I don't like the idea that a company should have any say over what the military can and can't do. Depending on how the technology is implemented, There's a hypothetical scenario where a company can turn off certain features mid-mission, putting our soldiers in serious danger. I'm sure the liberal-hating Americans would love that. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your thoughts. See you in the next one.